The purpose of today's press conference is to announce the first steps in a major reorganization of the Columbus Division of Police. This reorganization is designed to shift the division's policing efforts from an internal process model to an external process, service-oriented model. The new model is the result of a lengthy process that began in April with the support of the law firm Porter Wright and partner Luke Fedlam, who provided the police working group generous space to create this innovative model. Also, Chief Quinlan has attended dozens of community meetings which offered him insight into the changes being sought by residents of Columbus. I know that Mayor Ginther supports the changes that Chief Quinlan has outlined in his reorganization plan, as does the Department of Public Safety. The mayor has asked for a change agent in a new chief, and as the interim chief, Chief Quinlan has stepped up to make changes based on input from the community. The Columbus Division of Police does not have the luxury of just maintaining the status quo while the national search for a police chief is underway. Chief Quinlan has been closely involved with the Safety Commission that was appointed by the mayor, as well as the matrix study that is ongoing. Chief Quinlan has been very careful to take the things that he has learned, not only through those processes, the Safety Commission and the matrix study, but also through information he gathered by attending dozens of community meetings, resulting in what has been incorporated into the plan that he will outline here today. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to call on Interim Police Chief Thomas Quinlan to tell us more about his reorganizational plan. Thank you. Chief.
Thank you, Director.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to thank Director Pettis for his introduction and for his support throughout this process. I'd also like to thank folks that we have here behind me to support us. Nana Watson, the Columbus chapter president of the NAACP, and we also have Elder Larry Price of Treadstone Baptist Church, and Reverend Joel King and Reverend John Coates. They've all been instrumental in providing feedback to me on any revisions or adjustments we need to make to this plan. And also, just off camera, we have the executive staff team, which is made up of the deputy chiefs of the Division of Police, who met at the law firm Porter Wright, as Director stated, to have uninterrupted, no distractions, uninterrupted time to be in a room for 2 days to sit down and look at the organization top to bottom and see what we're doing well, what we need to refine. So with that in mind, this was a team approach. This was not something we just did based on gut instincts. It was based on the years of experience of all these individuals that I rely on daily to run the Division of Police. So my thanks to the command staff. All the commanders were involved and provided input on innovation ideas. The support staff of the Division of Police, and especially our civilians, provided phenomenal work after we came up with this reorganization. They had to make sure all the active directories and all the fiscal and payroll functions were all done, so I want to thank them. Also want to thank the Fraternal Order of Police. They everything we do that affects an officer's working terms and conditions of employment, we have to negotiate, understandably, with the Fraternal Order of Police. They could have stalled that process, but instead we found that they were very supportive. They worked with us. They met through labor relations process, and we agreed about 80% of the ideas that we were planning, where we could find common ground and get this running in a very quick turnaround time. So I appreciate their willingness to work because some of these things will be disruptive to the lives of officers as we disrupt units. And so I thank them for working with us to make this a better process. And especially thank you to the residents of Columbus and to our leadership here today. Again, without their input, without the work of the Mayor's Safety Commission and the matrix study, a lot of the directions that we're going to go in would have been more difficult. So why we're here is about change. That's what the mandate is. And why do we change? What were we not doing before we should have been doing? The laws change. The laws evolve. The courts, the way they apply and interpret laws, change. The residents and the community, what they want from, what their expectations and demands are from the police service, what we provide, changes. So we cannot afford as a law enforcement agency to maintain status quo. We have to change based on what their expectations are. And this approach that we've redesigned is the first step in a many-step process that's going to address these concerns. The approach was to look at the reorganization of the division and find out what we need to be doing and to address these demands and expectations of the public. And to do that, the very first step had to be, what is our mission and what are our core values? This mission statement, core values that we've had that you'll see over here, you'll see the previous one, served the division for a long time, and it's rooted in our culture. So to change these is a very big disruption to the culture of the Division of Police. Yet the leadership of the Division of Police decided that it was the right time and the right circumstances to make an impact in this area. Before we could make any other reorganization, we had to know where we were headed as the division. So we created this new mission statement, and we made these very difficult decisions to move forward with some new core values, which speak more to what the public wants today versus in the past. So let me first address the mission statement core values, because everything else we did was based off of that mission and these core values. To me, I wanted to have a statement in there that we serve the community. And I also wanted to incorporate the core values into our mission. So in short, you can see over here the new mission is the men and women of the Division of Police serve our community guided by our core values: integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. Now there's some new core values there. First of all, we moved integrity to the very first step. Everything has to hinge off that. But then the next part of our core value system had to deal with compassion. Officers are called on to respond to the harshest of conditions, the most trying of times in people's lives, tragedy, just heartache beyond belief. And we have to make sure that officers understand that one of our core values is that they respond and police with compassion as a key value. But the public also, is no mystery to anyone else, demands accountability. So I think these core values and this mission will address the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish from moving on beyond that. We looked at it top down. Everything was on the table, including the chief's office. So the first thing I did under the chief's office was I created a task force officer that did not previously exist. This is a FBI Public Corruption Task Force officer. It'll be assigned to the office of the chief of police. It'll be an experienced investigator, criminal investigator, also someone who has a reputation of holding officers accountable. We'll work outside the Division of Police with the FBI, with the resources the FBI has, and with the power of the federal laws that the FBI enforces. They will be able to conduct criminal investigations when it becomes apparent that an officer is engaged in anything that would rise to the level needing that level of inquiry, and that'll be done free of any internal interference because they're going to be outside the division and report only to the chief of police. The next thing I created was watch commander positions. So the command staff is made up of commanders, deputy chiefs, and the chief. And we understandably have, although we have 24-hour responsibility and respond frequently to events and other activities in the division or in the city, we also are, due to our schedule, predominantly a business hour operation. And because of that, who in the city of Columbus after 5 p.m. is in charge when something's occurring on the street? At 2 in the morning, when there's a difference between an investigator and a patrol officer or a narcotics officer, who settles those disputes? No one there represents the interests of the office of the chief. So I've established a watch commander program. Now there will be a lieutenant on duty at all times that is specifically assigned to the chief's office, has the functional authority of the office of the chief, and can settle any dispute, give directions, reallocate resources in real time as we need to shift where our staffing is based on what's currently occurring in the city. So those are a couple important things that we dealt with at the office of the chief. But accountability, again, being one of our core values, we had to incorporate and change our subdivision structure. And to do that, we created the Public Accountability Subdivision, and I assigned our Senior Deputy Chief, Rich Bash, to lead that subdivision. That subdivision is going to involve internal affairs, Professional Standards Bureau, which deals with our accreditation, deals with officer discipline grievance, deals with our research and development, our inspections, and others. We also have all of our human resources under one umbrella now, and our fiscal operations. Again, when we're operating under the budget we have and with the human resource that we have to make sure that we're held accountable, and we have one person overseeing everything from an accountability standpoint. So we've included all that under one subdivision. But what's I'm probably most proud of in this plan that we generated is the creation of a new subdivision, not previously existing, that is a community services subdivision. We had to look at everything we do was looking at what we do internally, but what do we specifically do for the public? And the community services subdivision matches our mission statement of serve the community. So in the community services subdivision, we created a community response bureau, which will house things like the community liaison officers. But more importantly, we've created a youth services team that not only will deal with truancy issues and crime issues during the daytime when kids are supposed to be in school, as we've done in the past, but now we're also going to have youth service officers out after hours, after school hours, to interact with teens and build relationships and create safe environments for teens at rec centers, boys and girls clubs, or neighborhoods where they hang out. And the other thing we're going to do is we have a cadet program. I said there's new initiatives. There's going to be more that are coming out. Once we get everybody seated in class, we'll have you out again to see our cadet program, which is a pipeline program for people who are interested in policing as a career, and it's really hopeful that we'll be able to improve the diversity of the Division of Police, be more reflective of the community through our cadet program. But these individuals, what the duties will be, part of their duties while they're working before they were hired on as an officer, will be a victim services. Now the courts have a pretty robust advocacy program for victim services, but that's during the grand jury and while the case is going through the court. Who's there to help victims navigate the waters while something's still under investigation? Who do they call? How much phone tag do they have to play with an officer, a detective who might be on the street or might be on days off or on vacation? It creates a lot of frustration. We're minimizing that by having somebody that they can contact and say, here's what I need, here's what I want to find out, and let that person do all the legwork for them and get back to them or get the detective in touch with them at a time that works for them. So victim service would be important. Another thing we have is we've not previously had, we get a lot of requests for community education. We do a phenomenal job in this training academy, training our officers and officers around the state. But what we get a lot of requests for is the community wants training on defensive tactics or safety in their workplace and active threat resistance. We've created a community education officer who will be able to focus on services and training that we can provide directly to community members to help them feel safe in their workplace, in places they worship, and areas like that. So that'll be an important part. Another thing that is on a lot of your minds, I know, is what we're going to do with the replacement for the disbanded vice unit. So we spent a lot of time on this and came up with a plan that we're very supportive of and ready to implement. In fact, it went into our organizational structure yesterday. It was effective. We're filling the positions, and we're going to be starting to train up on how we do that. So what it is called a PAC team, Police and Community Together. In the past, the way vice-related issues were handled, let's say prostitution, officers who were covert had a lot of autonomy, very little oversight because they're out in dressed in ways that most of us didn't even recognize them, and they're going out and making their own decisions, what street they're going to work on, who they're going to arrest, what bar they're going to go into. There was very little oversight. And my analysis in disbanding the vice unit was that we had a failure of leadership there, a failure of supervision. So we had to fix that weakness or that vulnerability. And this Police and Community Together team has done that. We will be taking officers who are no longer in a unit that's there for 10, 15 years and ingrained in that type of lifestyle. We'll be taking officers who normally work patrol and in community response teams, specifically from community response teams that we have that do directed patrols, sometimes uniformed, sometimes plain clothes. They will be able to go out, we'll mix and match officers from around the city. They'll be able to go out and work in prostitution investigations. They will, whether it be a male officer picking up a person engaged in prostitution or a female officer picking up a male soliciting a prostitute. Either way, we will have people in plain clothes to be able to do that, but then we'll have, the important takeaway here is we'll have officers in uniform make an arrest. There will no longer be any confusion from anyone that is told they're under arrest, whether it's the police or not, because it'll be a uniformed officer and a cruiser making that arrest. So that if someone tries to arrest you for a prostitution type charge in plain clothes, then there's a problem because we're only having uniformed officers do that. That'll provide more safety for the officer, more safety for the citizen, and that'll be supplemented with resources. That's where the community piece comes in. We will bring in resources to be able to provide for addiction needs, any type of housing needs, hygiene needs, everything else that we work with partners, especially the faith community that is supporting this plan, does a tremendous job in allowing us to provide an alternative to that lifestyle. We'll work with the Human Trafficking Task Force. We work with the courts, the Catch Court and Judge Herbert. There's a lot of positive interaction in how we follow up on these type of investigations. So without revealing all the tactics we're going to do, understand that this will be someone that we rotate in and then rotate out and put somebody else in. And they'll all be trained to do this type of activity, but they'll be working for a supervisor that they don't normally work for, so there won't be any alliance there or anything where we have a failure of supervision. There'll be very, very tight, multiple levels of control over what area we're working. You know, in Sullivan Avenue, it might be a prostitution issue. In Linden area, it might be a carryout, selling alcohol to underage kids. Another area, it might be a boot joint or after-hours club. We'll be able to be reflexive to the needs of the community with this type program. So afterwards, we'll do one-on-one interviews. If you have more questions, Acting Deputy Chief Jen Knight is the person who's leading that program for me, and she'll be able to provide some specific interest that we have in how we're going to roll this out. So the next thing, what I want to say about the PAC team is, one, it is the epitome of compassion, whether it be the prostitute on the street or the John. It deals with compassion while still enforcing law. It holds officers accountable because it doesn't have officers ingrained in a job for years that may start doing things on their own way, kind of going rogue, and that's not ever acceptable. And it also is respect for the rule of law, respect for the citizen we're engaging in. So there's a lot of our core values come out in that PAC team. The next subdivision I want to mention is the Criminal Investigation Subdivision. We did an overhaul on that, created a Major Crimes Bureau where we have a lot of specialists in your packet that we will provide you. It has a organizational chart, and you'll see every unit underneath the Criminal Investigation Subdivision. That will show the level of specialization we can bring to a situation when somebody becomes victimized. And we also have increased our partnerships with task force officers, whether it be DEA, Marshal Service, ATF, FBI, all these different task forces that we engage in. We're increasing those, including Human Trafficking Task Force. We're increasing the number of people who are there because through those partnerships, whether it be state or federal, we have greater jurisdictional boundaries, we have greater access to court subpoenas and search warrants, we have greater access to filing federal charges on someone and actually having a meaningful impact for the people who are actually poisoning our people on our kids on the street with drugs and engaged in major crimes or violent crimes. So those are all going to be positives. You'll see there's a lot of changes to our drug enforcement. Used to be called narcotics. It's our Drug Enforcement Bureau. There's a lot of changes and a lot of specializations in that unit as well, you'll notice. So to kind of wrap up, we have a lot of new initiatives. There's going to be, over the next 6 to 8 weeks, we have several really, what I think, really cool initiatives coming out, some really neat things that the public is going to be very receptive to. And we'll be rolling those out in the next 6 to 8 weeks as they're in class, in place, so you can actually film the individuals involved and what we have going on. So you're going to like those. But in the meantime, what we've done is established a new organization that is, after a year's work with Matrix Consulting, the Mayor's Safety Commission, we've also worked for a long time with the Bloomberg-Harvard City Leadership Initiative that the mayor was one of 40 mayors across the world is involved in to work on how we provide for greater diversity recruiting on the division. So in response to what we anticipate coming out for those recommendations, we're already reacting to what we expect in those and already engaging in that process in phase 2 and phase 3 of this rollout. So when they come out, we're already going to kind of know where we're headed as a division, already have the stage set to be able to start implementing those things in quick order. Again, thanks to the FOP who's working with us to try to make sure that we are open to change, and we do that. So we have a community services subdivision we didn't have previously, and we have a lot of nice features in there that we'll be rolling out and you'll be seeing. We have a new wellness bureau, stuff like that you're going to hear about that's really geared towards officers who have to deal with this, the trauma and the chaos that they deal with every day to care for their welfare so they can respond with compassion and be held accountable. We have a public corruption task force. The watch commanders are going to be important. Another thing that you're going to be seeing coming out, it's on one of our boards over here, is a mobile crisis response team. Again, we'll be putting officers, matching officers with trained clinicians that actually have time to go in and spend with the with people in crisis and follow up proactively. Stop by and make sure that they got their medication. Make sure that they've been to their meeting with their counselor or doctor. Make those relationships so we don't deal with them once they're only in crisis. So there's going to be some really impressive things come out over the next 6 to 8 weeks. I thank you for being here and covering the first phase of this. And I assure you that as we roll out some of these new programs, the community is going to be very excited about it. As you can see, I think we already have a good showing of faith leadership and NAACP that I've met with and explained all this to, made revisions based on their suggestions, kind of adjusted some stuff around based on things that they felt was going to be more reflexive or responsive to the needs of the community. We've incorporated those, and we're ready to move forward. And with that, I will take a few questions, and then I'll break it out for one-on-one so you can speak to the individuals that are actually involved in overseeing these plans. Tara?
Going back to the disbanding of ICE back in March, was it partly due to a cost-saving measure, a reduction in overtime, along with the failures that you mentioned, or a combination of several things?
No, it's a function the division needs to perform. So the cost saving or the overtime issues were just a leadership management issue we dealt with, but had no part in the decision I made to disband the unit entirely.
Any other questions? Any hesitation, Chief, about doing all of this while we're still engaged in this search for a new full-time chief?
No, and here's why. The national search is going to be looking for who is the best person at the right time to lead the Division of Police. As the director said, we can't afford to have status quo while we're waiting for a search that may lead into the first of 2020. If I were to be selected or one of my peers were to be selected, then we already have a really solid foundation to begin with. If another person is selected from around the country, that person can walk into the agency and they may want to make their own adjustments and tweaks, but they have a reform that has been done that provides them with, they don't lose a year waiting to try to make change. They're already involved in change. We already are making things that the community wants. And that's what it's about. No matter who the chief is, they're going to have to respond to what the community demands and expectations are. We're already meeting those. So if a new chief comes in from outside, they will be picking up what we are already doing and moving on, because this is what the community wants, this is what the community deserves, and this is what our new mission is: serve our community.
Obviously, this is a lot of reshuffling of resources, and I'm sure at the street level some things will remain the same, but like you said, Vice was outdated and needed updating and needed supervision. So Vice goes away and is replaced. Is anything else going away that people will notice a lack of? Units, specifics, anything like that?
Well, one thing we'll do, but it's not going away, it's being improved. We're changing some in the investigative subdivision, to generalist. As an example, let's say someone steals a car, and because in the glove box they find a person's address, they go to their house, they break in, the person happens to be home, so then they use force against the person to take property from them, and they won't let them leave. So is it a car theft? Is it a burglary? Is it a robbery? Is it a kidnapping? There's 4 different bureaus currently that 4 different investigative units that would handle those. By having generalists, we'll have the ability to actually follow that through wherever it goes and not be disruptive to the victim, trying to get bounced around to, okay, you investigate it, no, now this is involved, you investigate it. We're resolving that. So whatever changes we make are actually be improvements to the public, and especially to people who find themselves victims of crime.
Specifically, any other named units that won't exist anymore?
Not right now in phase 1 that we're doing now is adding units, and as we're bringing online, which we'll be rolling out again in the next 6 to 8 weeks, some really innovative units. What we will be doing is we will be staffing those once we get a full review under phase 2 of this plan, where our current staffing is for patrol, what we need in patrol to provide the basic services, and where we can afford to shift resources. And an important part of the matrix plan is how we shift our span of control, our supervisory oversight of officers. So we don't plan on doing away with additional units. We're planning on refining units. And as people take those new assignments, we'll look at whether we need to backfill or post the job that they vacated. That's through attrition we may be able to stand down some strengths of units.
You may have said, is there a timeline to get to phase 2?
By the end of the year, we'd like to be there.
You had met with the community about what they wanted. Was any specific device in prostitution, any specific area where they wanted more focus on?
It always comes down to property crimes and quality of life issues. There's certainly violent crime that affects people and that they're very alarmed about and concerned about. But what we hear is, what are you doing to interact and build relationships with the youth? What about the prostitutes or the panhandling or anything that we see that's abandoned house? And those are the things, that's what Safe Streets is really focusing on, not just guns and reducing the violence, but focusing on those type of quality of life issues. That's what I hear repeatedly over the majority of the public we interact with. And I just want to go back real quick to the last question. All I say at the end of the year, no major substantive changes will be made to units being disbanded or reorganized and having to pick jobs beyond what we've already created until the next chief selected. So if it is someone new and they want to come in and do something different, we're not disrupting officers twice in a very short period of time. So as again, we're talking about a wellness bureau for officers. This is part of that. What they do, how they work, where they report to, their days off are important, and we want to make sure officers that we're asking officers to do an awful lot. In return, we want to help them create some type of control over their work life as well.